The Liberal government has just signed off on a deal to sell Canadian-made light armored vehicles to Saudi Arabia. The deal was negotiated by a private Canadian company, not the government. But the government does have to sign off on the export permits for these specific vehicles. And the Liberals just did. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Stéphane Dion, did sign the export permits. And I'm glad this is an $11 billion deal that will create jobs for thousands of Canadian families when Canadians need jobs the most. And if the Canadian government refuses to sign off on export deals negotiated by private companies, what country would ever do business with Canada ever again? And look, I get it. Saudi Arabia is a human rights abuser. I'm from the oil patch, so I personally know people who have gone there to work, and they've come home and they've told me about the lack of freedoms and the human rights abuses and the mistreatment of the temporary foreign workforce in Saudi Arabia. But this deal feeds Canadians, and I'd rather Canada gets these jobs than Russia or China. And really, that's what this all comes down to. But Liberals being Liberals, they are consistently inconsistent. What they're saying now compared to what they said when they were in full electioneering mode is drastically different. Just look at this tweet from January 21st, 2015 from Gerald Butts, Trudeau's chief advisor. He's basically the entirety of the Liberal brain trust. Butts' tweet says this: reposting in light of today's arms deal with Saudi Arabia, principled foreign policy indeed. And then he posts a graphic that compares human rights abuses under ISIS to those under Saudi Arabia. Okay, so Butts didn't like the arms deal when Harper was the boss. I guess he felt he needed to say those things because that would help get his team elected, but that's sure changed since the Liberals won last year's federal election. Principled foreign policy indeed. I guess it's hard to take any stance the Liberals take seriously. All we have to do is wait a few months and it'll just change again. And now, the Foreign Affairs Minister Stéphane Dion has signed off on the export permit for the deal Butts hated so much a little over a year ago. Actually, Foreign Affairs Minister Dion did more than that. He's defending the deal, but he's making a typically clueless Liberal argument to do it. Now, the argument isn't clueless because I necessarily disagree with it. I actually agree with it. Dion's argument is clueless because I don't think the Liberals are aware of just how hypocritical that argument is. Dion defended the trade deal with the Saudi Kingdom, our ally in the fight against ISIS, by saying canceling the arms deal will have no effect on human rights in the region. Dion's right. There is no evidence that these Canadian vehicles would be used against the Saudi Kingdom's own citizens. But Dion's argument is hypocritical because we can compare that argument to Canada and Canadian issues, namely pipelines and our resource-based economy. So let's do it. Let's expand on Dion's thoughts, shall we? The federal government gives out mandate letters to each ministry. They're basically a minister's to-do list. The mandate letter for the federal environment minister, Catherine McKenna, says this: recognize the economic cost and catastrophic impact that a greater than 2-degree increase in average global temperatures would represent, as well as the need for Canada to do its part to prevent that from happening. As part of this effort, support the Minister of Finance in creating a low-carbon economy trust to help fund projects that materially reduce carbon emissions under the new pan-Canadian framework. That's interesting, because I thought Dion just said that the Liberals weren't going to do things if they don't actually make a difference. Isn't that what Dion just said about the Saudi light armored vehicle deal? Canada's oil sands accounts for 0.1% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Canada as a whole accounts for less than 2% of the world's greenhouse gas CO2 emissions. Shutting down the entire country wouldn't make any difference in whatever CO2-generated climate apocalypse they keep telling us to be on the lookout for. But here, now we have an entire ministry devoted to climate change that Canada plays absolutely no role in. Now, I'm glad the Liberals are not going to do things that damage our economy, like canceling multi-billion-dollar trade deals with the Saudis because it won't make a difference in the end. Now, they need to use that same logic and quit holding up Canada's pipelines and our energy development. It won't make a difference in the end either. Pick a lane, Liberals. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.